This video is brought to you by BetterHelp. The Tony Awards are no stranger to making history. If you've watched any of the documentaries on this channel, then you know that the Tony Awards is one of the biggest stops for many Broadway shows. However, that almost didn't happen this year.
Changes are on the way for the upcoming Tony Awards. This year's ceremony will not be televised due to the ongoing writers' strike.
And so what are you hearing from just sources about the writers' strike? I mean, are we anywhere closer to resolve their issues?
No.
The past few years have offered a slew of unconventional challenges for the Tony Awards, and this year's was no different. On May 2nd, 2023, the Writers Guild of America went on strike, leaving the entire Tony Awards in Kimberly a limbo. The American Theater Wing, the organization responsible for staging the Tony Awards, thought about doing this year what they did back in 2020 with the COVID shutdowns. And they thought about postponing the ceremony until fall when the strike was hopefully over. Something that would have left Broadway totally shocked. The reason the Tony Awards are so important is because they literally can mean life or death for a musical. Those few minutes where they get to perform or a few prestigious awards can really be a big difference maker in getting butts into the seats. Especially now, in a year where shows are struggling to pull in audiences. The WGA recognized this, and they agreed that they wouldn't picket the ceremony as long as a couple of conditions were met. And one of the biggest was that this year's ceremony couldn't be scripted. The Tony Awards are no strangers to making history. And on paper, or not, everything pointed towards this one being one for the history books. Now with a promise like that, and given how important the Tony Awards are to all of the shows that we have talked about and that we're gonna talk about in the future, I figured it would be pretty cool to finally pull back the curtain and take a look at just what goes on in the room where it happens. I'm Brendan with Wait in the Wings, and let's crash the 2023 Tony Awards. So I'm dressed for the occasion. I put on this Old Navy flamingo tropical shirt that I had because there was really a tropical theme to this year's Tony Awards that I wish I had known about beforehand, because I absolutely would have worn this to the ceremony. Being at the Tony Awards when like 3 years ago, it was just something that was background noise in my grandpa's house when we had barbecues, was completely mind-blowing. And I have so many stories, so many hot takes to share with you. But before we dive into all of that, I just want to take a quick second to thank this video's sponsor, BetterHelp. Now this one is specifically for all of the people watching who, like me at one point, live in those small towns that I'm talking about. You know, the one where you literally know everybody and you can't really confide your deepest, darkest secrets because you're gonna see them at a bar later that night. And that was the problem that I was facing. But thankfully, with resources like BetterHelp, they helped me figure out how to get around that. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service. And what's great about it is that it's 100% online. And I know that 100% online can be intimidating. It's like when you buy shoes and you're afraid that they might not fit. BetterHelp has over 30,000 licensed professionals. So all you have to do is tell them it's not working out, and then no judgment, they'll help you find the perfect fit for you. And you can message your therapist anytime, and you can schedule meetings at times that are convenient for you. So go to betterhelp.com/wings, that's help, H-E-L-P, to get 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp and get matched with a therapist who will listen and help. So where should we start with this story? I think the best place is to tell you that I was not planning on doing this. This is something that came about as a result of peer pressure that I will never forgive Amanda from Swell Entertainment for. How dare you give me one of the best nights of my life? Usually when I have friends who are coming into town, I'll ask them if they want to go out and get coffee, show them the city, fun stuff like that. And Amanda said yes, and then she said that she was coming into town for the Tony Awards, which I foolishly thought she was just coming into town to finally watch Shucked. I'd fly across the country for it. And so she told me that she was going to the Tony Awards. And me being nosy, I asked, how did you pull that off? And she gave me the info on how to actually buy a ticket. And, you know, it's one of those things where you have to weigh the options. This is what always happens anytime one of these big things pop up. It was like Rebecca, and it was like going to Hadestown reopening, Beetlejuice reopening, all of this stuff, where I have this moment where I have to weigh the pros and the cons. And really with this one, the only con was the price tag of the ticket. It was way too much, which outweighed all the other cool stuff that I was thinking about with this, which was I get to be at the Tony Awards, but also I get to take the camera in and I can do what I've been trying to do with this channel, which is to increase accessibility to the behind the scenes world of Broadway. And it's like I said in the intro, where the Tony Awards play such an important role in all the shows that we've been talking about. To be there and to see the behind the scenes mechanics of it was just really a cool opportunity. But like I said, the price tag was just way too much. But then they offered me a cheaper ticket, and I foolishly brought this up to Amanda. She listed off all the pros that I had said. And so I said, okay, Amanda, I'll make you a deal. I don't think they're working this weekend. I will send them a message saying, okay, I will take this ticket. And if they respond, then I'll go. This was on Saturday. This was the day before the Tony Awards. But sure enough, like instantly messaged back and said, yes, we can get you these tickets. And so I pulled out my credit card and I bought the ticket. And Swell got this great picture. If that's not the face of a confident purchase, I don't know what is. And it's interesting because this year they decided to hold it at the United Palace in Washington Heights. They usually hold it at Radio City in New York. So you have the glitz and the glamour of, ooh, it's Times Square, it's the theater district and all this stuff. But this year, the United Palace, it's high up in Washington Heights. And so it's like, ooh, there's a bodega. We're walking up and it's just like, okay, it's New York, it's regular New York. Look at this, the magic of the Tonys.
Run! You're gonna lose your seat.
And then all of a sudden it just changes from Washington Heights to like a Hollywood backlot. And it was just like, it was tent city. Like there were more tents than Barnum and Bailey, where you had a tent for the after they got their award, where they would go up and they would talk to people. They had tents set up for the after party. It was incredible. And as we were walking up, I cannot overstate how thorough they were about making sure that you were supposed to be at this event, because it was literally every 2 steps you had to show your ticket to somebody. It was here, it was here, it was here, it was here, it was here. Our fake tickets worked. They had the red carpet entrance on one side, and then they had the Muggle entrance on the other side, where all the normal people come in to see the show. And what really blew me away was if you look across the street, it was just all these police barricades and everybody standing, waiting to see everybody who was going in. Look who I found. Tell them how you bullied me.
I bullied him because I said it was a good business move to come here, and I stand by my decision.
Only good thing I've gotten out of this is a velvet bow tie. And I guess this is pretty cool too. And it was so fun because I used to play this computer game growing up called The Movies, which it was animated. It was like you make these animated videos. It was kind of like The Sims, but for a movie studio. And at the end, after you're done with each calendar year, you go to the awards show. This is what it felt like, but on a higher level. It felt like the awards show in the movies. So then they start ushering everybody in. And what's crazy after that is that, yes, you have it separated where you have the red carpet on one side and then the regular entrance on the other side. But once you're in the theater, it is they intersect, and then it's just everybody is crammed into this small section. And so then once you get into the actual theater, it was just, there were no barriers. It was mind-blowing to me being there, seeing all of these people that, you know, that we have come to know through the videos and researching, and then a couple of Zoom interviews. But now to actually see them in person and all in one general area is an experience that I can't really articulate and I can't put into words. It was like, oh, look, that's Bonnie Milligan, nominated for Best Feature Actress tonight, and Kimberly Akimbo, waiting to get overpriced champagne. Or then it was like, oh, look, it's Tom Kitt. And so after 5 minutes of just being completely starstruck, I decided to get into line to get some of that overpriced champagne. And as we were going in, I saw Robert Horn, who is the book writer for Shucked, who basically created Shucked, which if you know me and you've been following me on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, you know that I am a huge fan of this Korn musical. And I came over and I finally like introduced myself, and he said, it's great to finally meet you. And we just like, this moment is a blur because it was kind of that starstruck moment of, whoa, you know who I am. I got the champagne and I went back out into the mingle zone, and I saw Casey Nicola, who is nominated for director for Some Like It Hot. But as you know, if you've been following the channel, I interviewed Casey over Zoom back in November for the Elf musical. So it was cool to actually go up and get to finally introduce myself and meet him in person. So then we went down and I ran into Robert Horn again on the stairs, and we finally got to finish our conversation where he said that he was just very honored to be there and he was very just happy to be nominated. And, you know, like a lot of us make fun of that, oh, it's an honor to be nominated thing. But when he told me that, you could honestly tell that he really genuinely meant it. And then I told him that I really want to talk to him about Shucked down the road. So hopefully we'll get an interview set up there. But then as we were going into the merch line, who did I notice but Mr. Mark Bonanni, Broadway by Ghostlight, who the night before had told me that he got tickets to for the balcony. And this year was really cool because you know, we do the annual Tony predictions, and this year we did the predictions on Patreon. It was a Patreon exclusive, and it was me, Mark, and then Margaret Hall, who is a fantastic journalist and works for Playbill. And what's crazy about this year is that all three of us who were in the competition were at the actual Tony Awards, which we're going to talk about later on because that definitely came into play.
Mark's breaking a big rule because he hasn't seen every show, and now he's about to expose himself to a bunch of shows he hasn't seen.
So then Bonanni and me started walking around, and it basically became like, you know when you go to Costco and you just start naming out the brands that you see? Like you don't necessarily do anything about it. You just name out like, oh, look, they got a giant jar of Jif peanut butter. That's basically what the rest of the night became, where it was just, oh my gosh, look, it's Jason Robert Brown by the bar and things like that. So then we get to the part where we actually go into the theater. And part of me thinks that this might have been the first time that the United Palace was ever filled to capacity, because these ushers were working their butts off trying to get everybody to their seats. I'm a pro wrestling fan, as a lot of you might know. And I immediately just got these pro wrestling vibes where it's like when you go to a taping for Monday Night Raw or a pay-per-view, and it's so cool to be in it and to see all of the cameras and all the lights and to hear the backstage chatter that's going on. And it was one of those moments where you walk in and you just, you have this perspective of how crazy it is, how far we've come on this journey of Wait in the Wings.
Who do you want to win Best Musical? Shucked? Are you lying? Is that just?
Who do I want to win?
Is that just because of me?
Who did I vote for?
I don't think you voted for anyone. You didn't vote for anyone.
Oh no, that was
You didn't?
for March.
That was March Madness. We're 3 minutes to the top of the show, people. Everybody get off your cameras. That's unprofessional.
So you sit down, you have the cameras everywhere. They had this huge crane in the back that did all the big sweeping shots. It was a very nerdy thing, but it's like, I'm gonna use the footage from you in 3 years. I admittedly got distracted by the sky cam that was going around because my head just went with, wow, that is the same technology that they used for Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. Later on in the night, they had to come out and they had to hand out the playbills. Finally, a first Tony playbill. And I I didn't know how thick these things were, but it's kind of embarrassing. I was so taken in by the crane camera and the Spider-Man camera that I have not looked through this yet. So we're going to do this in real time right now. They've got Broadway by the numbers. That's pretty fun. Which show had the most debuts? It's K-pop with 24. And then they give a fun fact where Helen Park makes history with her debut as the first Asian female composer for a Broadway musical. Wow, they have so much stats. Oh my gosh. When we get to the 2023 Tony Awards season for the channel, this is going to be my guide where I can tell you confidently in a unnecessary tangent that 32 productions opened on the west side of Broadway, while 7 productions opened on the east side of Broadway. This is a good time to bring up that, as you know, we do a Kickstarter, like an annual Kickstarter that provides funding for Wait in the Wings for the entire year. And one of the perks that I really love is the mystery playbill. And how that works is basically shows that I see or that I'm close to, I basically just stock up on playbills for this giveaway. And for this one, I may have grabbed a few on the way out. So very exciting. This could be you could be one of the 15 people who gets one of these Tony Award playbills. But as we were leaving, this is jumping ahead, but as we were leaving, a guy's like, you don't have to hide them. Like, you're allowed to have those. Maggie, if you're watching this and Maggie works for Playbill, I don't have these. All right, so then we get to the actual pre-show ceremony, the Act 1, which thank goodness I got these tickets because then I didn't have to deal with figuring out what Pluto TV was. So the awards started getting called out. And, you know, it's one thing to lose the Tony predictions sitting in your apartment eating a Hot Pocket. But it's another thing to be sitting in the actual theater with your competition all around you and just feeling after each winner gets announced how badly you're losing. It was just like, oh man, why did I go all in on Christmas Carol?
Promptly at 7:50, you're welcome. We're going to ask you to take your seats and clear the aisles because we have a special opener for you, which does require them to be clear. Nobody wants to get injured. That's not our style.
And then after Act 1 cleared, Juliana got up and she needed to go to the bathroom, right? And then she gets to the aisle to go out into the lobby, and she gets met by an usher who's doing this. And what I didn't know is because I was in the theater, but what was going on out in the lobby is that the ushers were pleading with people to like leave the bar line and get into the theater because they were about to start the show. And then when the ceremony actually began, it was another one of those surreal pro wrestling moments where it's like when you watch a fight start backstage and then all of a sudden it makes its way out into the arena. It was basically just like that, except it was Ariana DeBose doing kick lines. And admittedly, a lot of us in the theater couldn't actually see what was going on because what we got on the cameras was just basically everything on stage. So anything that happened in the orchestra and anything that happened backstage, we couldn't really see. So we didn't know what was going on downstairs, but it sounded like they were having a good time. And then we all got to have fun when everybody showed up on stage. And you know, I actually think not having a script made the ceremony better because it made it just more authentic. It was like earlier this year, I went to Broadway Cares. They have their annual Easter bonnets. And what I really loved about that was that it was all of these big names like Josh Groban, Jessica Chastain, all of these big name Broadway stars coming on stage, but they all just felt like so down to earth. And it felt like like the high school theater conventions where it's just everybody is huge theater nerds and we're all happy to be there. That's what Easter bonnets felt like, and I loved it. And in a lot of ways, that's what this felt like. It just really felt like there were no pedestals and that everybody was just genuinely themselves, which I loved.
30 seconds.
Applause, please. Applause, please.
In 5, 4, 3, little applause.
So I don't want to give you an exact play-by-play of how the night went on because, I mean, you know, I'm pretty sure this is streaming on Paramount Plus. So what I want to do is I want to give you a perspective of what it was like inside the theater for a lot of these key moments. And I wanted to start with some of the standout moments for the actual speeches. And I think we should start with Michael Arden because I didn't know this, but a big section of his speech actually got censored. So basically what his speech was he was talking about how he was ridiculed and bullied for being gay growing up. And what he said is, I was called the F word a lot growing up, but now I'm an F word with a Tony Award. Only he didn't say F word. And I'm sad that they censored that out, like the whole thing, because as soon as he said that line, the entire place popped and we all stood to our feet and we were all just cheering and clapping at that. And then in a sad twist, later on in the night with Parade, everybody gave their thanks on it. And then Jason Robert Brown came up. He got out Mary Fagan and then the mic shut off. And all of us went, wait, let him speak. Let him say something. But then all of a sudden, just the Phantom chandelier popped on screen and the Phantom music started blaring and then the lights cut out. And I wrote this on Twitter. I said, I feel like Jason Robert Brown getting cut off by the Phantom chandelier is actually a metaphor for Broadway in some way. What you didn't see is that when that package for Phantom of the Opera was playing on your screen, Jason Robert Brown kept trying to say something and he kept trying to speak into the microphone. But then that leads us to, without a doubt, the two biggest wins of the night, which were J. Harrison G. and Alex Newell. Having seen Some Like It Hot, I can tell you that J. Harrison G. is, without a doubt, the best part of that show. And when their name was read off, the entire place erupted.
And the Tony goes to
J. Harrison!
And then we get to Alex Newell winning for Best Featured Actor. And this one was really interesting for me on a personal, but then also on a documentarian standpoint, where I went to the first preview for Shucked. So to get to be there to see Alex Newell's first standing ovation after singing Independently Owned, to this moment where they become the first openly non-binary actor to win this award, was truly humbling and something that I just am honored to have had the privilege to see both of the times.
Alex!
When you're looking at everything that is going on with the hate and the attacks against the Black, trans, non-binary, and non-gender conforming members of society, it just makes it that much more impactful to see them winning in this way and getting to unapologetically present themselves on this global stage and say, this is who I am, and there's nothing wrong with it. And what I kept thinking is that somewhere in the world, someone is watching this and finally seeing themselves and being able to say, wow, I can do that and I want to do that. So now let's move on to the performances of the night. And there were a lot of them. I just want to take a second to talk about some of the ones that I really loved. And this is where the hot takes are going to come in. Again, I want you to know that these are just my opinions. They might not necessarily align with yours, but this is just how I felt as an audience member sitting in the crowd. I actually really liked the New York performance. And I don't know if it was just the magic of being at the Tony Awards and then all of a sudden that's how they set the mood and they welcome you into it. Or if it's just that I'm such a simp for the Empire State Building and they had two of them in this performance, one during the day and one during the night. Oh, what more could you ask for? It leaned into the power and the effectiveness of the music, which I think is that show's strength. Another one that I really loved watching was & Juliet. This is a show that I've been wanting to see for a while now, and it completely ran the board for my Tony predictions, even though I haven't seen it yet. I accidentally, I think, went for like an & Juliet suite because I did & Juliet again.
My goodness, for a show you haven't seen.
I know.
Yeah, you're really
from all the clips I've seen, everything online. They sound a lot better on the television. In person, there was consistent trouble with the sound mixing where either the music was too loud and so you couldn't hear the voices, or the voices were too loud that you couldn't hear the music. And that's kind of what took away from the & Juliet performance and why I feel like it didn't get as big a reaction in the house as a bunch of the other performances, just because like it was really loud and not in like a good way, like in a ow kind of way. I also want to give a Tony Award to this cleanup crew for the speed at which they cleaned up these streamers. And then my favorite performance of the night, which is going to come as a shock to absolutely nobody, was Shucked. It was everything that I thought it needed to be and more. I think it gave such a good representation for what the show is because it really didn't stick to just like one number. It gave you the highlights of the entire show, but they did it in a way where you still didn't really get too much spoiled as to what the actual story is. And I think what just really made me love it more than any of the other performances is that it really felt like a celebration of the immense hard work that everybody has put into the show. And it felt like a celebration of like, everybody doubted we could be here, but we're here now and we're going to be unapologetically us. And then a couple honorable mentions. These are ones that weren't like either here or there. I just want to say thank you to Lea Michele for singing the Buddha song, the blah, 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 blah. I got my Buddha. And then I also just want to give a special thank you to everybody who gave us the lyrics for that Neil Diamond sing-along. Ba, ba, ba's and all. So then we got to the main event, which was Best Musical for the evening. And I noticed people started filing out of the theater, which we'll come back to that later as to why I was shocked in the moment, but I think they made the right move. I went into this really just hoping, somewhat selfishly, that Shucked was going to pull it out and get that Best Musical Tony. Because it's like I said, I'm selfish, and I was thinking about down the road when we do make that Shucked documentary, how great of an ending would that be if they won the Best Musical Tony Award. But obviously, things went a little bit differently.
To announce the Tony Award goes to Kimberly Akimbo.
So let's talk about some of the stuff that went on during the commercial breaks or before the actual ceremony went on. It was very nice because they gave us a timer, and it was usually 2 minutes on the dot that they would count us down. But during those moments, to keep the energy up and keep things lively, they would do these little segments. And the two that really stood out for me was right at the beginning, they did this like Kimberly Akimbo style retrospective where they just flipped through the pages of like an old yearbook, and it was everybody's old yearbook photos that was there that night. And then the part where I really lost my mind was when they did a segment called Puppets of Broadway, which was basically just like trivia about the puppets of Broadway. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, man, they better not do my boy Kong dirty.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of upset that I stopped recording because right when I did, Milky White came on. And when I tell you that this entire theater stand Milky White, you gotta believe me, because the eruption in that place when Milky White showed up, it was like Celine Dion just walked into the theater. And what's so interesting about this is during the commercial breaks, people don't stay in their seat. Like, everybody stands up and you can just, it's like you're at a party all of a sudden, and you can go over and you can talk to people that you know, you can talk to friends that you've met, you can make new friends while you're there. It's really a social event within the confines of a theater, if that makes sense. Another thing that you didn't see, which is going to lead us into the ending of the night, was you could not see just how hot it was in this theater. I think their air conditioner was broken, and boy, could you tell. If you go back and you watch through, Alex Newell even called this out in their speech, where they're saying, I'm not going to keep you here because of how hot it is. And when Nathan Lane came out and said, whoa, is it hot in here? It's because we were all literally dying.
Like a big sweat bead just dripped off of my forehead because it's so hot in here. It's because Josh Groban was here. Milky White.
I waited on the mezzanine for about probably 10 minutes because I was running around, collecting all of these playbills and stealing them from a man who said, hey, those are mine. By the time we actually got outside into the hallway, the thinking of this was the first time that they'd ever really had full capacity came back into play, because it was just, we were at a standstill, and it was literally like a can of sardines, and we were all just like, you want to talk about a star-studded traffic pileup. It was incredible, where it's like, wow, I'm very hot and I can't move, but look at that. It's Casey Nicola. Look at that. Audra McDonald's over there. Like, what a fire hazard is what I was thinking, where I'm thinking if something goes wrong and like some light malfunctions and all of a sudden the theater's on fire, it is going to be absolute chaos, because this was, I think, one of the disadvantages of having it in the Heights is that you were 100 blocks away from the theater district where a lot of the after parties were. And I think one of the advantages for Radio City is that there's places for you to go after you get out of the theater. But here it was after you leave the theater, you're way up in the Heights, and you either have to wait for an Uber or you have to try to figure out where the subways are. And so I think that was playing a role in how fast they were able to get people out. And again, when you have that huge horde of people there in a building that the AC isn't really working at, it definitely took a toll.
Look at my forehead.
Oh, you are sweating. Wow.
It's because I'm carrying 30 pounds of
I'm not
playbills.
too hot. It's just like I'm aware of the heat. It's not like unbearable.
Well, you know what they say. Some like it hot. But I'm not one of them.
But then, thankfully, we got outside of the theater and it became a lot more cool, and not just temperature-wise, because it was really that thing of the red carpet just ceased to exist. And you're seeing people walking around with their Tony Awards, and like Mark just started talking to Bonnie Milligan, and Bonnie Milligan's like, oh yeah, I remember you. And it's just like, it's crazy how everybody is just on the same plane. I remember I saw Janine Tessori and David Lindsay-Abaire, and part of me really wanted to go up and introduce myself, because Janine Tessori, of course, we've covered the Fun Home documentary here. But then David Lindsay-Abaire wrote Rabbit Hole, which was my first lead role in college. But echoes of, hi, Rachel, I'm Brendan, were playing through my ears. And so I decided not to. And then once you leave, it's like you're back in the real world, which was crazy. Because you go down into the subway station and it's just everybody is in their tuxedos. And I can only imagine what the shop owners of Washington Heights thought when Broadway came and took over. And that is the story of the 2023 Tony Awards. Truly a remarkable night, one for the history books. And I'm kind of happy that it was unscripted because really it was like we were all just hanging around the drama bookshop, if you think about it. Like it was no different than that. And if you don't know what the drama bookshop is, it's basically this entire store that is just dedicated to selling scripts. And it's where Lin-Manuel Miranda actually wrote In the Heights. And it has this huge, somewhat troubled, but ultimately rewarding 100-year history that I just recently covered in the most recent documentary. And you can watch that by clicking on this video right here.